Hello and welcome to the King's Forum podcast show. I'm back with another episode of Char and Mike Keeping It Real. We have a very special guest with us today, Dwayne. Hi, Dwayne.
What's good? What's good? Thanks for having me, guys.
You're
Thank you. So, Dwayne, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell the viewers who you are.
Okay, so as you heard, my name is Dwayne. Full name Dwayne Nosworthy, aka Dwayne Knows He's Worthy. I'm a dancer, so people may know me as a dancer. I've been dancing or was dancing for say over 20 years, turned choreographer, and now I consider myself to be an all-round entertainer, motivational sharer. Yeah.
I like that. So, well, Dwayne, so as we spoke before, we had a conversation about generational cycles. And you seem to have quite a lot of knowledge about breaking generational cycles and the importance of it to our own selves and to our children and to other people. So I just wanted to have this discussion with you about this. So I just wanted to firstly ask you, to you, in your personal opinion, what is breaking generational cycles about?
Well, it's about, I guess it's about breaking the pattern, the old habitual default setting and pattern that has been stemmed from before we were here. Do you know what I mean? So our parents' generational pattern, we have to break that. Their parents' it's not just about I don't want to, because you said the generational cycle, so I prefer that to saying the generational trauma, but that's a lot of what it is. You know what I mean? I like the fact that we say generational cycle because, I mean, that it can be positive and negative. So for me, it's about breaking the old habitual default setting that sometimes starts and stems from, well, no, in fact, always starts and stems from way before you were even here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's goes like our ancestors, and then they pass it through, and then it's just a cycle, isn't it? That's the
ancestral cycle. It's the ancestral cycle that starts from way before we were here. Hence why I consider myself and always say that I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. So it's something that happened before we were here, which we as a spirit know about, but as human beings fail to really understand and delve deep into. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. No, it's true. I mean, I have similar thoughts on that. And sometimes when explaining to people that we are, spiritual beings live in a human experience, they look at us, look at me like, that doesn't even make any sense,
They look at you like you're one of those kumbaya people. Loads of people look at me like I actually start things with listen, I know it might sound a little kumbaya, and I get it. I actually understand it because I felt the same way about it. I had a friend who, from way back when we were younger, he used to talk to me about a lot of just this spiritual stuff. He was always quite level-headed and quite aligned with spirit, but also able to just speak to you on a human level. Do you know what I mean? Just talk to me on a level, and I always got it. But I also thought, bro, this is very kumbaya, bro. This is a little bit kumbaya, innit? A bit deep. And as I got older, I started to recognize and feel that, oh, this is what he was talking about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? The things that we feel that we don't necessarily understand, but we feel it. And we're like, well, what is that? What is that I'm feeling, but I don't quite understand?
Yeah.
Where does that come from?
Yeah, no, it is true. I mean, when did you, both of you as well, Mike, what age was you when you come to understand about generational cycles, trauma, and, when did they become very important to your daily living? When could you no longer then ignore that actually I've been faced with this these feelings, these triggers, something doesn't make sense. And she said, you got to try and figure it out. What age would you both say that you were at when you started to experience this?
I'd probably say early 30s. I'd
Okay.
probably say that. And then you start really, it's becoming more self-aware and looking at, you know, finding out about your family history and things like that, and trends people may say about, for instance, my family name. Oh, they're all stubborn people, or they're all like this, or they're all this way, and they have these particular traits and behaviors. And it's looking at that and saying, you know what, instead of just being like the rest of my family, I want to be different and break away, because that's actually a negative impression people have of me and my family. So I'm looking at trying to be a positive and saying we're not all like this. Because I'm a part of the family name, I can be my own person and break away from that, and kind of be an individual. Even though I have the family name, I'm taking the next generation to this direction in a positive way, so then people can start saying positive things about, you know, that family name, that it's being associated with maybe this way of thinking instead of a negative way of thinking. So you become more self-aware and you go through stuff, and then you start looking back. And I think that's all knowing yourself, and really through life experience you start looking at, you know, what you've been through and why, and start, instead of the first response sometimes is being anger, you start reflecting and saying, you know what, instead of getting angry about this, what actually happened, and what part did I play in this thing happening and occurring? What was my part? And you look at what you can control, because you can't control is how people respond to something that's gone on, but you can look at how you've responded to it, and then look at how to manage your behaviors and going forwards. And that's, for me, that's life. You need to learn from it. Is that, you know, you go through stuff, and then you may be angry or upset about it, but then you look at, why did I go through that? Was there some reason that my behaviors, my following, you know, from past generations, did they always react like this when they went through certain things? Or do I need to start really looking at the way I'm reacting and responding to things, and, you know, learning from that and being better the next time? So if something does occur, I respond to it in a way I can actually get something from this, or, you know, look at it in a positive light and move
And you
forward.
feel more comfortable as well.
Yeah.
You feel more comfortable within yourself because you're responding in a way that is comfortable for you.
Yeah.
And different.
It's being individual, instead of thinking, oh, the family that we normally, you know, my dad or someone would have responded like this, you know, that's the family name, I need to respond like that as well. He would have dealt with it like this, so I need to deal with it like that. No, I need to deal with it the way that I think, you know, as you said, I feel comfortable with, and I feel is the right way.
And
yeah, go on.
did you find that, was there anything that triggered that self-awareness, or was it something that just came as time went by? Because I know for me, I've always known that I was spiritual, but I never kind of, I didn't really understand it when I was younger. And I had all these different abilities, you know, and it was just kind of like spiritual abilities, and it was just crazy. And it was like, but crazy in a great way, but scared, you know, in a human way, human being way. And then I found over the last few years, when I started to see that there were certain things going wrong within my life, and I was noticing myself and seeing how my family were, I found that my true spiritual awakening actually came a couple of years ago. And ever since then, I've just been on my own personal journey. And a lot of people I've outgrown, a lot of people just are not interested. And that's fine. I wish them all the best. But I kind of had this feeling. It was just a feeling I had inside of me that just was getting stronger and stronger, and I couldn't avoid it. And I thought, okay, I need to start being a lot more truthful within myself. So I then decided, okay, how am I going to do this? And when am I going to do it? And it came at a time when I was actually at my lowest. And I thought, well, I don't want to get back up and just bounce back as I always would do. Something has really got to change. I need to unbecome things that I didn't like. So being at my lowest was actually a great thing for me, because it was a turning point for me. So I did start questioning what I did like about myself, what I didn't like, my fears, what is my spiritual calling, and every area of my life. And I've just been on that journey ever since. And so that was my awakening for me personally, was being at my lowest and knowing that I couldn't, and the spiritual feeling was stronger than the depression. So it was like, okay, let's go, let's try and work with this uncertainty, the unknown, and just go for it. So that's my personal experience anyway. That's how it worked for me. What about you, Dwayne?
I mean, it's amazing because it's quite similar to both yourself and Mike. Like, for me, there was like different moments in life. There were different catalysts that took place that, like yourself, Char, made me go, ooh. From a young age, there was things I had noticed. I remember something happening with my mum, and just, you spoke about it, Mike. You said like how our like parents would respond, and what I've realized is that it wasn't a response. A lot of people react. They don't respond.
There you go.
They react. Do you know what I mean? And they don't recognize that when they're reacting someone else's action.
Yeah.
So I kind of learned from a young age that me reacting that action didn't benefit me. Do you know what I mean? So from a young age, I kind of, again, like you, Char, I knew there was something, but I didn't quite understand it. So from a young age, I knew that I was moving and navigating differently, but I was still moving and navigating from the human experience first. It wasn't the spiritual. There was a load of spiritual stuff happening to me from young. Different catalysts were taking place, but I was still navigating from the human experience first. But whilst experiencing this spiritual beingness happening, do you know what I mean? I was like, what is that? I don't quite get it. So there was different things that took place. There was ones when I was a child, when I was young with my mum, and she said something and had a bit of a reaction. I mean, by the way, Mum, I'm not blasting you, Mum. You're the best mum on the planet. But there was just things that, that she did that I was like, yo, Mums, what? Just giving me, just that reactive. You're just like, you ask your mum a question and she just turned down, and you're like, whoa, what's up there? And it was trauma. It was the generational cycle. She did her best to protect me, that she didn't recognize that I was still seeing and feeling the generational cycle. I was still, do you know what I mean? And I didn't quite understand it because, again, that was from a spirit. It was a feeling.
Yeah.
So, and then there was other things that took place in my personal life that made me go, like you said, Mike, that made me have to look at myself. So like about mid-20s, things took place. And I remember just wanting to just kill the world based on what happened. But I had to look at myself and see what part I played, where I was responsible, where I was accountable. Yep. Because there were things that were out of my control, like you said, Mike, that I couldn't, there was no point in me dealing with blame and fault. Although there was a lot of blame and fault, even on myself. Back then, I didn't recognize that blame and fault wasn't something that I needed to lead with. I didn't know it was about responsibility and accountability. It was more about blame and fault. And I was placing that blame and fault where I felt it was necessary. So be it outside of myself or on myself, it was mainly about blame and fault. But then I started to kind of tweak it and realize that it was about responsibility and accountability. And I started to recognize, oh, this is where I can start to respond accordingly instead of reacting to a person or a situation or, you know what I mean, different things. And then like you, Mike, and yourself, Char, say 30s, even like down to just, a few years ago, I started to just find this alignment. I started to recognize what was going on. I started to find my love language. I started to realize that this generational cycle that we're talking about, I have the power to change it.
Yeah, it's within, isn't it? What we need is within ourselves. It's just bringing it out, and manifesting it. And a lot of people don't see that the power does lie from within. It's just everything that is kind of like how we're conditioned and what we're led to believe, and from my childhood upwards and society. So we can get very, very lost. And then it's like, oh, hang on a minute. It's like, for example, I said this, I think, before in a different podcast. One of the questions I ask myself on my own personal journey is, who am I? That was the question I started with. Who am I? Okay, yes, I'm crying. Yes, I'm feeling this. Yes, I'm a mum, I'm a daughter, I'm a cousin. This is my work. But actually push that all to one side. Internally, who am I? And the question was so much more difficult than I thought it would be. And you find yourself trying to make excuses like, well, I'm just a kind person. And I'm thinking, well, no, they're just my qualities. And I'm thinking, no, come on, you've got to go deeper. You've got to go really deep. And it took me a good while to actually answer that question. And even now still, I ask it. And sometimes I do become a little bit unstuck and I'm thinking, okay, I need to do a bit more shadow work, for example. Or I need to work on this, or I need to keep taking off the layer, or, because we're like an onion, aren't we? You just got to unbecome what you don't want, what doesn't work for you, to get to the root core. And it is a really kind of, if Mike, if you was to ask yourself that question and really sit on it, you would say it's really difficult. It's a really difficult question, but once you've answered it, it actually then becomes easy in the sense, because you then know, okay, right, I've got to go on a new, path. And I don't know how long the path is. Personally, I think every journey is a long term. You should always, keep being true to yourself, keep reviewing yourself. But then as time goes by and you start learning new things about yourself, that question that you took so long to answer within yourself does then become easy. Does that make sense, what I'm trying to say?
I think it's difficult sometimes because we're always evolving.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We are becoming better versions of ourselves, or this, a new us. And I just think that's an ongoing process with us as people. I think we're always evolving. So that question becomes tricky, doesn't it? Because who am I? I may not be the same as yesterday.
1000%.
You see what I mean? So that's why it's confusing, because you'll be like, oh, wait a minute here. Before I was thinking like this, but now I'm on this path. And now this is, as you said about connecting to your spiritual side now. I'm on this path now, and I'm more aware of my spirit. I've had a spiritual awakening. So now I know I know what direction I'm heading in, and those feelings I had before, this is where I'm at, and I'll connect with them. So I think that's the constant confusion, is that we're always evolving. We're not the same. We don't stand still. Just like the earth's moving, so we're becoming better versions of ourselves, different people. And as you said, on your journey, you've left some people behind, because those people don't want to know the new version of you. They don't like it. They don't, you're moving on and they're still stuck. People don't like that, man. They want you to stay at the place where they were and are. And you're moving on, and you're coming from this different standpoint now and talking on this different level. So these people don't want to know that. They don't want to deal with this new version of you. It's too much.
But the thing is, I found that sometimes it happened naturally. I just found myself not speaking to certain friends as much as I used to. I just kind of think, because I was so focused on what I was having to do. And then when I did think, oh, I haven't spoken to them for a while, I found that I just didn't miss them, but I also knew that communication works both ways, doesn't it? And I just and then when I did have a conversation, the conversation felt so different to how it used to be. Does that make sense? And it was and it became from an hour's conversation to 10 minutes, and they don't reach out, and it's just, and I don't know, I just flew with, I just went with the flow, sorry. And I don't know, it's really interesting. I mean, I see when Dwayne, on one of your posts, and you were saying about our parents, and you were saying about, your mum, about, I know you're saying on the post, sorry, that about our parents and their trauma, and remembering that they're actually humans as well. That was a very big eye opener as well for me, because even though you're on your own journey, I actually forgot that, hang on a minute, what about my parents? What about their trauma?
Others are on their own journey too. And a lot of the time, when we are, say, met with somebody's reaction and somebody's generational cycle, because that's often what you're met with. You're met with somebody's human experience. So when you're talking to people, a lot of the time you're speaking to them, and they're speaking to you from their human experience. So even if you're having a beautiful conversation, when they're triggered, that switch that takes place, and you start talking to them, this person that you were just having a beautiful experience with, and you've now triggered them based on you saying something like, oh, you know, like, I just remember like when this person hit me and it hit me in the face and it made me feel this way, and they're triggered by this, what you said, and then they get reactive, and you're kind of like, what's happened here? And you have to, instead of reacting to their reaction, you have to take a moment and realize, oh wait, this is their experience, this is their trauma, this is their cycle. And rather than me you remember the cartoons that we used to watch when, you know what I mean, when people are fighting, just like people under the smoke.
Yeah.
Rather than get involved in that, just take a step back and go, wait, this isn't mine, that's theirs. And I'll lead with empathy and compassion, but I've got zero tolerance for any type of nonsense in my life. I'm not saying that what they're going through is nonsense. I'm just saying that if I get involved in what's going on right now, it's gonna be nonsense to me. You understand?
Yeah.
So when you do that, and you can go, like you just spoke about, like these people started falling off. And I really honestly believe that when you say yes to yourself, you don't have to focus on saying no to anybody or anything. Because naturally, when you say yes to you first, you say no to that which isn't right or most beneficial to you. Naturally, it happens. Do you know what I mean? I often say that my door is off the hinges, right? Like I walk, I'm totally open. Kind of like what Michael's talking about. It's like it's a process. It's an everlasting evolution. You're constantly changing, constantly evolving. So my door is always open. And a lot of people say, so what? You just let people in. Yeah, but the thing is, because I'm protected by the higher power, yeah, when you walk in, everything is transparent. It's like I'm in a house, I'm in a space. My space is like an open field of mirrors. When you walk in, I can see you. You can't hide. So don't try and come in and mask. Most people are masked, innit? Most people are walking around with a mask on.
Yeah.
And pretending and thinking that they're a certain way. But I just bring them. When they come inside and be with me, I remind them, look, you know I can see you, innit? So you know I see your horns. You can't hide. I see you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm protected by the higher power. So the demons can't come and just, they know. The devil himself will say, no, don't allow him, because he's the door's open. He can see you. You can't come in and try veil yourself and mask yourself. He can see you.
And it's your safe space, isn't it? When they come into your safe space as well.
I'm constantly protected. Yeah?
Yeah.
Because I think and love myself. And I have stopped the generational cycle, so to speak. And when I say stopped it, I mean I've stopped it from what it was, like Mike spoke about earlier. I'm not.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. I was going to ask you both that. Was there any cycles in particular that you broke? I mean, you don't have to, you know. Yeah.
Everything I'm sharing is mine to share.
Yeah, Mike was just saying about ancestors and reacting to anger, wasn't you, Mike? Before we got cut off. Sorry.
If we look at pain and our ancestry, slavery, things like that, the pain and that, because you spoke when you mentioned generational trauma, and that pain and that hurt from ancestors have been passed down, and we talked about reacting to things. And I think that's a lot of the anger. When we talk about the anger, my parents and their parents felt, you know, I that can you can look at that and think, oh, that's a response, because that's when I look back and think, why are they so angry all the time? Did it always, you know, I always got that from my parents and my parents, right? A lot of anger is their initial reaction to everything. You know, they don't process stuff and be like, oh, actually, maybe let me let that sink in for a while before I respond to that. It's like lashing out. Like it's the first response all the time. And I think there's a lot of pain from generations being passed down. And that's when I look at that and say, look, yes, don't get me wrong, that's in us. Yeah.
Yeah.
We can we have a choice on how we react to things. And and that's where the emotional intelligence and knowing yourself, self-awareness comes into it. And then you start reflecting on things and saying, no, I'm not going to just react. I'm going to process this, and think about it. And then I'll have my response when I'm ready. I'll take that moment, because I've got to be the same. Yeah.
So instead of just reacting, you made the decision to kind of, okay, instead of just reacting straight away, let me just take a step back, process, then respond. So that's breaking of a cycle, isn't it?
Yeah. Without putting my family on blast, which I want to do.
No, you're not. For the record, the Collins family, Dwayne's family, this is not putting anybody down. Please just be made sure.
Aware of my mom and like niece and nephews watch this. So I'm just like, no one's getting put on blast. Don't worry, guys. It's all good.
Yourselves, please. Just protect yourselves. My mum just be like, yeah, that's Charlotte.
Charlotte, I'm sending them in. I'm sending them in.
I'm protected too. Listen, I even have my bracelets as well, just for that extra protection. The tiger's eye, the black obsidian. You can stay away. I'll send them back to you. I'll just send them back to you both. But so yeah, Dwayne, you were saying as well. Sorry, something's happened there.
Yeah, I totally agree with Mike on that one, man. But I was speaking of kind of what he just said there at the end. It's like without putting anyone on blast, isn't it? That's why I like to publicly share what's privately owned, because it's about, I want to share my experiences. Do you know what I mean? I want to be an open book, but there are certain things that are for me and me alone, or for me and my tribe and my village. There are certain times people are not really ready to hear what you got to say, but at the same time I'm going to share it. There are certain times that you're sharing something that is your story, but it's not your story alone, like because we're talking about generational cycles. Right. So I'm sharing a story that is from my perspective, but we're talking about generational cycles. So that means I'm going to be talking about my mum's cycle, my grand cycle, my granddad's cycle, my dad, like all of these different, the family tree. Yeah. And there's certain things that you have to be careful when you're discussing, because it's not your business.
No, it's true. You know what I mean? It's true. It is true.
You got to respect it.
Yeah.
So it's about talking about it, like Mike was like saying, there's a lot of pain. Yeah. We can talk about it on a general level, but from
that's what it's about. Yes. It's all generalized.
It's from pain. A lot of our generational cycles are from a reactive pain space. And if we can recognize that, then we can break that cycle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I do absolutely agree that it is important that, keeping this topic generalized is kept generalized, because as you said, there are things that, is for yourself or anything with your family. It is between, you both. And I just think that just having it as a general discussion is a main thing. And I just like to hope that people will, listen to this, and even if it's just kind of helping one person, to hopefully become more self-aware and face things, or in similar situations to where we have been before our awakening, that they know something isn't right about ourselves. We need to change it. We don't know how to. And there's 3 people here that have spoken about it, and it gives them kind of that food for thought. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, what advice would you both give to anybody that is on that path to spiritual awakenings and or wanting to break generational cycles, but they're not sure how to. What would you both say to anybody that would question that?
I would definitely go and have conversations with your parents and stuff and find out. The more I found out about my histories, the more I started to know about myself. And that was the biggest thing for me. The more I asked questions to my mom and dad, cousins, uncles, aunties, I had the conversations, and then the more I started to know about us as a family and kind of, oh, these are trends, that these are patterns that were formed. This is kind of like the behavior. We do this, and I started looking at stuff in my life and the way I've reacted to things and the patterns in my life. And I'm like, no, wait a minute here, what's going on? So me and my younger brother are good at this. We're good at self-reflecting. So we'll look on, kind of things that have happened and how we've reacted to things and patterns in our lives, and look back and say, no, this needs to stop. We want to go in another direction, because for this person, it didn't end well. That wasn't a great ending for this person who behaved this way. Mm-hmm. So I don't want it going the same way, and I know I need to stop it in its tracks. And it's being connected with your spiritual side and being aware. And what I like what you say, Dwayne, is great, that you're protected. You're protected love and your connection to the spiritual world, and that's great. And being that aware of it, and having that spiritual awakening where you just know where you're at and your connection with that side is a big deal as well. So look at your family history. No, it's not for everyone though, as you said about the whole kumbaya. Some people don't want to hear that whole spiritual thing, which is cool, because you can just do it from finding out your family history and looking back and kind of patterns and trends and do the work, man. Go and find out about your family and what you're about, where you came from and your ancestry and all that. And then you'll see these patterns and you'll look at that and then start reflecting on your own life. But you need to be very self-aware and be able to reflect on what's going on with you. Dwayne, what do you think?
I 100,000% agree with everything that you just said, Mike. And because you've touched on that, and I'm glad you've touched on that, I would also say, which I'm sure you would agree with, whilst you're on that journey to asking questions, because I think it's really important and really imperative that we ask questions and get those answers, but also you've got to what I call the AAEE philosophy, right? And that stands for acknowledging, accepting, experience, and embracing. So you've got to acknowledge, you've got to accept, you've got to experience, and you've got to embrace every thought, feeling, and emotion. Because on the journey of asking those questions that Mike is talking about, guys, you are going to feel some feelings. Yeah. So you've got to acknowledge them, you've got to accept them, you've got to experience them, and you've got to embrace them. However, you do not become those thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Right. So you've got to recognize whilst you're on this journey, whilst you're during the process, because a lot of the time we're so focused on the destination, we're forgetting about the beauty, of the journey, all the things that you're going to see and you're going to find out. The process is the beautiful part. The destination, the outcome, the result is beautiful, but it's the journey that brings all of that. So it's what I like to say, whilst you're on this journey to finding and breaking that generational cycle, when you're on that journey, you have to recognize that you are the sky, and your thoughts, feelings, and emotions are the clouds. They will pass by. Let them pass by. Don't become them. You are not your clouds. You are the sky. You are the sea. Your thoughts, feelings, and emotions are the passing waves. Let them pass by. And if we can recognize that when you're on your journey to asking those questions that Mike is talking about, you've got to know that you have to own responsibility, that the power is yours to change and break this cycle. You have to keep that, I would say keep it in mind, but I'd actually say keep it in spirit, which allows the mind to then understand, because the mind is logical and the mind wants to logically understand something, whereas the spirit understands that which it doesn't see. The spirit understands that which it doesn't understand. It is within the realm of I don't know what that is, but I can feel it. I can understand that.
Do you think as well? I mean, I think one thing also we have to remember to anybody as well, that we have to be kind to ourselves as well. Because especially if we feel something that is, you know, negative or upsetting, we have to remember to be kind to ourselves as well. But what I wanted to ask as well, a lot of people talk about anxiety. And do you think that that plays a big part when, you know, you live in the human you live in the human experience, but also being a spiritual being? Like, so for example, like I get anxious quite a lot, and I find that I can, you know, I know what my triggers are, but I also find that sometimes I can be in an environment and I'm anxious about something, and it's like the spirit's trying to tell me something, but I can't read what it's saying. And I just wonder sometimes, does anxiety, is that kind of a sign of your spirit trying to tell you something? Does that make sense? I don't know if I've put it in the right context or not, but does that make sense what I'm saying, Dwayne? Do you know what I mean? Maybe
1000%. I think every thought, feeling, emotion is your spirit telling you something. But what happens is that our human experience then wants to lead and says, hey, we need to logically understand this. And we make fear, anxiety, stress, frustration. We make all of these a negative thing, which it can be. We're not going to lie and say that it can't be that. It can be that. But in actual fact, they're just a thought and feeling, emotion. For me, they're a perfect opportunity to learn, change, grow, and evolve. So if we can change our perspective, and if we can lead from spirit, we then logically understand the feeling, that thought, feeling, emotion. We don't have to, and we'll spiritually actually understand it. So then logically we can deal with it. We don't have to now make it a negative experience, because it's our brain, it's our human experience that breaks it down to us thinking that anxiety has to make us feel so anxious and negative. Whereas, like you said, it's a sign from the spirit to say, it's like your spider senses. Be aware of this. And like Mike said earlier, because you feel that way, you now learn how to respond. So you feel a certain way, but now instead of reacting to your anxiety in a way that the human experience says we should, the human conditioning, the external program conditioning, instead of reacting, we respond accordingly from a space of love, because that's the spirit. If you can respond from everything from a space of love, if you allow everything to just go through this field of love, the vibration, the energy of love, everything feels better. Anxiety feels better because you understand it differently. You know, you respond accordingly. You go, oh, I feel anxious in this moment. Instead of feeding the anxiety and becoming the anxiety, you allow it to pass by like the cloud.
Yeah,
I hear you.
No, it's very true. I think, like with me with anxiety, I have had many bad times where I've become that. I've allowed that feeling to overwhelm me. Mike knows when I've had conversations when like I've been in an absolute state, and it's not just for like a day, it's for a few days, and you know, Mike will do his absolute best to try and, you know, ground me and kind of bring me back to that space. But he always does say, just be kind to yourself. And then I then settle, and then there might be something, you know, a few months later. I think the longest, I mean, and because I've been on a personal journey the past, more so, even more dedicated the past year and a half, I actually chose to have neurological psychotherapy because I was diagnosed with non-epileptic attack disorder. And it was only meant to be 3 months therapy, and it's been a year and a half. And the therapist, actually, she's very spiritual as well. So, and funnily enough, she's actually leaving. Now my sessions are coming to an end. So I was like, this was meant to happen. You know, when I first met her, I was so unsure. And then, long story short, I thought after the first session, I was like, actually, do you know what? I'm going to work with this. And so the neurological psychotherapy was not just logical, it was spiritual as well. And she would send me things because she knew I liked meditation. So she would send me things like yoga nidra and, meditative things to do. And it was just amazing. And I said to her, I said, this was meant to happen for a reason. But the point I make, but in that whole time, I was so much more anxious than I had been in a few years. And I'm thinking, oh my God, everything's coming to the surface. I'm realizing this, I'm trying to become this. And it was just like this anxiety would just build up. And it was just kind of like, and that's what made me ask that question, like, is this possibly part of it? Because I've learned to embrace it now. And I've actually got to a point where when I said it to you, didn't I, Mike, the other day? Was it the other day I said it to you that the last few times I thought I was going to have an anxiety attack, I've managed to stop it. My body will feel it physically. I might have a headache or I might feel tired and maybe even still feel overwhelmed. But it's like I've stopped it and I've recognized it and not allowed myself to be in it, for like longer than a couple of minutes. Does that make sense? So to me, I just look at it like, oh, well, that's a great achievement.
No, well, it is. Let me ask you a question. Like, it's like we've all got a space here. Would you allow a squatter to just come and live with
you? No, I like my space.
but that's my point. So it's the same with those thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Don't allow them to come and stay with you and pay no rent.
Yeah, true.
That's all it is. It's like I'm not allowing any thought, feeling, and emotion, or anything that is non-beneficial to my growth, my change, my evolution, my soul, my peace, my love. Anything that doesn't honor me from that space of peace, love, and serenity. I'm not allowing it to stay in my space and pay no rent.
I hear you.
Like a squatter, you get me, mate? It's like, what, I'm actually asking the squatter to stay. I'm actually saying, well, no, stay, man. Don't pay no rent, bro. What, you want food, do? What, you fancy chicken? Oh, you're a vegan. Oh, vegan.
No, but it's so true what you say. Well, that squatter is I've kicked them out now. Do you know what I mean? Then now and again they'll do a knock on the door, but then as I said, it's got to that point. They might do a knock on the door, then it's like, no, sorry, you can't stay.
Leading with the spirit is that you don't even have to kick them out. They leave. That's the point I'm saying to you. When you lead with the spirit, they go, oh, everywhere around me is mirrors. It's an opportunity for me to be my truth. I don't want to show up as my truth. I'm comforted by the lie. So I can't be around this person. I can't stay with Mike. I can't stay with Char. I can't stay with Dwayne because they see me for who I am. And I've been hiding for so long.
I hear you.
This scares the out of me. You know what I mean? So I can't be around.
Yeah. No, cool. It's true. And this is why, another reason why I wanted you on this podcast, because you talk so much truth and you're very open, and you do keep it real. And I mean, I've loved this whole conversation, this discussion around generational cycles. Mike, what's your thoughts? I know that I've enjoyed it very much. I've been looking forward to this podcast all morning.
Listen, the conversation has been fire. Yeah. Thanks for coming on, Char, as always. But yeah, it's been great. It's been great just to share our experiences and our perspectives and and just have a chat about it. It's always good, isn't it?
Yeah.
Free enlightened people just having a conversation.
And Dwayne, and what's it? Is there anything that you would like to add to this?
Do you know what? For me, about generational cycles. Sorry. For me, I'd really like to add that if we truly want to make a difference in society as we know it, like, let's really be honest and have the conversations that we are doing right now, like without judgment, without projection. And when I say without these things, I know they will exist because we're still having a human experience. But I mean, without leading with that, let's really, like we said earlier, let's be kind to ourselves and each other. Let's lead with love, and let's give ourselves the space, the open space to understand each other. Whether we agree or disagree is irrelevant, but just showing each other a space and showing and sharing a space of what I like to call, my list is empathy, compassion, understanding, overstanding, understanding, with and from love and respect. Let's just do that, man.
Definitely. I can't agree.
And I think, yeah, same here. I can't agree more. And I think that's a lovely way to end this conversation. I really do. Dwayne, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. And I'm pretty sure there'll be other times you'll come on again because you do have a lot of knowledge, a lot of things to share. And it'll be great. It'll be an honor to have you again on the Char and Mike Keeping It Real podcast. So a big thank you from me.
Big thank you from me as well. And yeah, you're welcome back anytime. And people, please like, share, and subscribe the video. Dwayne, what socials are you on? Where can people get a hold of you?
So on Facebook, I'm Dwayne Nosworthy. On Instagram, I am Dwayne Knows He's Worthy. So that's DWAYNE KNOW Worthy. Yeah, well, he's worthy. And yeah, that's it. Really. I'm not on any other socials. So yeah, check me up on there.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.